Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Today we are reviewing Captain America from 1979, made for television, not in theaters except in the country of Colombia. I am Joe Gould, and I am with Adam, Old Man Winters.
I have a Shout Factory 2-pack. Is that the one on my DVD?
That is what I have, and it is the most bare bones release ever.
It showcases a suit that looks like Captain America and a shield that looks like Captain America, but we didn't see much of that suit in this movie.
No, we did not.
Well, speaking of, it's weird to talk about Captain America without talking about World War II, but I guess it really doesn't have immediate relevance to this movie.
No, I'm not sure that any of the old Captain America movies have any connection to World War II.
How many are there?
All right. So you have the serials in the 40s. I don't count those. So you have 79, and then the sequel to this movie, I think, also came out in 79. But and then there was a 1990 movie.
That's the one I thought
I got myself confused. I got myself so confused on that.
I didn't know that was a different thing with the fake rubber ears and all that. I don't own that.
I rented that as a kid. I do remember renting it. I don't remember if I liked it, but I do remember an Italian Red Skull, basically, and a rubber suit. So when I saw there was two made-for-television movies, I just assumed that was one of the two. I didn't think too hard about the 1979 versus 1990 part. That the movie I watched was obviously not from 1979. So I don't know. We're going to have to make a decision on that one.
Yeah, I
kind of want to see an Italian Red Skull again, though.
Well, this movie could have used any kind of memorable villain. This movie could have used.
This movie could have used anything, interesting.
Well, this movie had some excellent aerial footage.
Yes, for pre-drone world, that was probably the most impressive visual in the movie.
Talk about the very opening scene.
Well, any of the scenes where they're up in the air, or they're filming from the air,
and there's a lot of it in this movie.
Yeah, and it drags on and on and on. It's it's extended visual effects, I guess you would call it. Watching a motorcycle go down the road, or a Scooby-Doo van.
I attribute that a little bit to, because we said it's a made-for-TV movie, but a lot of the television shows in those days, if they were any kind of action show, and I'll include the early to mid-'80s as well with this, since we're in late 70s. Magnum P.I., I have these memories of a lot of helicopters. And maybe you can attribute that to a lot of Vietnam-era pilots coming home and there just being maybe a large supply of helicopter pilots to just do stuff. And they film from the helicopter, and they film the helicopter, maybe from another helicopter. Just kind of how this feels like to me. I get the feeling as well, maybe this was an adaptation of a script somebody pitched for an Evel Knievel movie that did not get picked up, and it got morphed into a Captain America film.
As we've mentioned before, I'm a big fan of The Incredible Hulk. Big fan of the TV series with Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. So in 1978, that's when CBS came out with The Incredible Hulk. And it was a big hit. Expensive hit, but a big hit. And I think that they may have been trying to kind of strike lightning twice, but it just didn't work. So The Incredible Hulk, you basically have, some might say it's a ripoff. I would say it's in the same vein of The Fugitive. They're like a big green monster. And it works because Bill Bixby is an amazing actor who everyone likes. And Lou Ferrigno is just awesome, bashing through walls and his green paint. It works. It doesn't look real cheesy. I mean, it is cheesy to some degree, but they pull it off.
Yeah.
And then in 1979, we get to Steve Rogers' Captain America, which is just as much not faithful to the source material as the Hulk stuff was. But it failed. So I think a lot of this is just, if you're going to go away from the source material, whether it's because of a budget or you're just trying to modernize it for a 1970s audience who might not want to read comic books, don't underestimate a big green Hulk helping your ratings.
He was great for the TV commercials. You just show that in the commercials and you hook the people in.
Yeah. So Steve Rogers in this movie was never frozen in ice. And I'm not a big historian on Captain America, so I may get some of this wrong, but This Captain America did not fight in World War II. He was not frozen in ice. He had no Bucky. He did not
We don't
have
know.
a.
He might have been on his football team or West Point. We never know.
Yeah. I'm not sure when his shield became vibranium, but he
Ooh,
does
the
not have that
shield.
here. He has a
Oh, the
shield, but not
shield.
the shield.
Oh man.
And this guy is this Steve Rogers is just a former Marine who's out of the military and just wants to drive around in his van and draw pictures of young children on the beach.
Captain C America. Find yourself.
I do find it ironic, in 2024, we're watching this movie and Steve's hanging around the beach sketching young children, and that just doesn't play the same way as it might have in 1979.
I don't know if it would have played great in '79, but I think he should have concentrated on the bikini ladies. Maybe that he seemed to have an interest in a little bit of that at one point in the film.
Yeah, so this Steve Rogers. So I'll also say historically, Steve Rogers has, at least in modern times, been portrayed as like the all-American kid with integrity, doesn't say bad words, obeys all orders, nice manners. This is a kind of a beach bum turned sketch artist.
So I do like the idea that the movie opens with him just driving around in a van with a motorcycle attached to the back of it, and it's a red, white, and blue pattern stripe on the van. And I don't know he goes to that surfer shop first, and he said, I guess that's where he gets his mail delivered somehow. And I don't know how long he's been out of the military, because it sounded like he was getting mail on the base from a scientific company. Mr. Simon, Dr. Simon. What's Simon's last name?
Mills. Dr. Simon Mills.
And he wants him to come by for a visit.
Yeah, so my takeaway for that scene was I got the feeling that he worked there prior to going into the military, or he was at least really good friends with the guy who did work there, and that's why the mail would have been kind of going there.
Okay.
Maybe he was living in his van prior to going to the military.
He lives in
the equivalent of a P.O. box.
Man sees the American dream. He lives in a van down by the beach, the ocean.
Yeah. I guess one other distinction we should make between the comics and this movie is that in the comics, Steve Rogers is a frail little wimp who gets the super serum and becomes Captain America, the superhero. This guy is a full-fledged Marine, all muscle, no limp, no nothing wrong with this guy. He's a blonde hair, blue eyed, all American, 250, looks like he plays football, that kind of stuff.
Kind of like in the first Avenger movie, the guy who Tommy Lee Jones wanted to be Captain America, right?
Yeah. So just a few random details in this movie before we get into the plot too much. So the movie was directed by Rod Holcomb, and the star, Steve Rogers himself, was Reb Brown. And I watched an interview with him today. It wasn't anything substantial and what it was, but he came across and sounded a lot like a Canadian Donald Trump. It's like, oh, it's a great movie, best movie ever.
When was this interview filmed?
It was a couple years ago. I think it was right after COVID. The dude charges like $50 for an autographed picture.
$50. Well, I mean, I'd say that's about standard rate if you're at a convention to do an autographed picture.
Even if you're the 1979 Captain America.
I know it ain't great, but if you're at a convention booth, I think that's going to say it's standard practice for that industry.
Oh, I'm sure it is, but
now
he does look very
similar. Who in the world would want to spend that on a Reb Brown autograph photo?
Well, I might do it just because I'm a completist. Like, if I'm there, I don't want to give that up. Well, these people aren't getting younger.
No, they are not.
Visually, the guy's still in good shape. He looks a lot like the old Flash actor. I can't remember his name. The TV series.
I'm blanking on it, but I think it's one of those people who goes by three names. Maybe John Wesley something.
Yes, John Wesley Ship, or maybe Ship.
Sounds bad. I was going to say Snipes.
Anyways, no. It's John Wesley something.
John Wesley.
But anyways, he's a good shape. Looks like he's going to live for quite a while longer, so I don't think he got a rush on the autograph. But
those are the people who die way before they're supposed to, though. Just seems that way. Yeah, they said the fact that Keith Richards has outlived Richard Simmons should make us all question the importance of diet and exercise to life longevity.
Well, so I will say I don't think at this point he can die too early. So I'm not sure how old he was, but the movie came out in '79. Let's say he was 25, so from '54. The guy he's over 70s. So
So
whatever supplements he was
Where
taking.
did Reb Brown play football at?
I think you told me, was it USC?
University of Southern California, and he played it in the late 1960s, and he lost his job at running back to guess who?
Is his name a Juice?
He was most notable in his acting career for playing Detective or Lieutenant Nordberg in the Naked Gun trilogy of movies, which is odd because I guess you could say that O.J. Simpson both beat Reb Brown out at football and also had a better, more prominent media television career than Reb Brown did. Do we know what else he would have been notable for, Mr. Brown, other than Captain America 1 and 2?
He was in a lot of movies. I'm not sure how many of them were made for television. And he had quite a few shows as well. So he has, like, if you just look at a list, it's probably 30 to 40 movies and shows. Again, I'm not sure they're all lead character kind of stuff. I think Howling Part 2, I think, might have been one of them.
Oh, the
I'm not sure
Stephen
what role.
King version adaptation?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I didn't go down too far that rabbit trail. But he's doing Comic-Con, so I think Captain America was his peak. But,
Man.
And the budget for this movie was $150,000, which I didn't do the conversion, but I would assume is a couple million right now. So
that sounds pretty good for what this was. What did CBS and Universal, did they have bigger plans for this? You talk like it might have been a TV show pilot pitch.
Yeah, it was intended to be a pilot for the show, and they didn't pick it up. But they did okay the sequel to the movie. It's funny, I don't see a budget on this as being all that large. You have the upfront cost for just the sets and the designs and stuff. But I mean, if you had made this into a series, the ongoing budget does not scream outlandish.
Yeah, you don't have to do near like what you would do with the Hulk TV show. But I feel like they probably would have gone through a lot of vehicles, a la Dukes of Hazzard style. Cars and motorcycles would probably have, unless it was a big... that's the other question. Did the fact that they already had Dukes of Hazzard on CBS and it was a big hit, did it start around the same time, 79? Did that ultimately win out over this show?
I'm not sure. I would think this would have more competition from the movies or the shows like the $6 Million Man or the whatever that woman one was, the Bionic Woman. I think they even stole a sound effect for that show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think it's whenever his super hearing took place.
Okay. But, I forgot he had super hearing in this movie. I didn't quite understand when that was happening, what was going on. I thought my DVD had some kind of coding error on the audio.
When you need a cheap special effect, super hearing is the way to go.
But you can pull it off a lot better than they do in this movie. You got to show the person's ear a close-up to sell that.
Yeah. Mixed reception from critics. Most people who actually know what they're talking about gave it a pretty poor score. Ironically, the Rotten Tomatoes score is 79%.
That's very good. From the critics or the audience?
The audience. And I did look. So let's just say the 1 stars vastly outnumber the 5 stars. And there's a lot of 3 stars. So I think it's in kind of a, if you want to call a C- a good grade.
Well, as I recall the Rotten Tomatoes system, it's either like or dislike, right? That's the percentage.
It is, and it gave me a percentage, and I never saw tomatoes in this particular one. It just like ranked out of 5 stars. So maybe it's a different kind of page, but it was part of Rotten Tomatoes.
So the fact that you could have a lot of 3-star reviews means more people like it than dislike it.
Yeah, I guess you could say if it had gotten 4 out of 10, it would have been a failure. But since it got 5 out of 10, it got okay. It's average.
Gets in that 79 percentile. And I don't know. I really don't know if I'd give it the sum up or sums down. I'm leaning down, but
this is a thorough thumb sideways kind of movie. Like it's I have heard that the sequel's a little bit better, but I thought the main thing about this movie was the pacing. It was so slow.
How long did it take until he got the Flag Super Soldier Serum injection? Was that 40 minutes in?
Yeah, it was about halfway, and then we had to go another 30 minutes or so, I think, before the suit. But
that was in like the last 15 minutes of the movie, wasn't it? The so-called suit.
We got a little bit more bike, if I remember right.
So that's right. He got the patriotic bike before he got the suit with the little shield and
Yes.
everything.
Yeah. I feel like at least 10 minutes of this movie, and I might not be right, but I feel like 10 to 15 minutes of this movie is just overhead shots of a van or a motorcycle.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not even including the chase scene where they're chasing down the truck. I'm not even including that in that. But yeah.
They got some great shots with that helicopter. I mean, I'm watching that and I was thinking, man, that's the sort of movement that you expect something to crash really close to the ground and making some big swings on direction trajectory.
I want to mention now, in case there's some weird squeaky noises on the podcast, I've been borrowing I've been using a different desk chair for the last 3 or 4 months. And my wife had my old chair. So she finally got a chair for her office. I took my chair back. I'm not sure what she did to it, but it's all kinds of squeaking. I'm trying to keep it under control, but just in case.
Put some WD-40 on that.
Yeah, yeah. So there were a few parts of this movie that, at some point, kind of got picked up by the comic book series, which I would never have thought that this would have done such a thing. But apparently, in issue 237, Steve Rogers establishes that he is a commercial artist in the comics. And then in issue
let me jump in right there.
Go ahead.
Can I jump in for a sec? So,
yeah,
I do remember the weird numbering on Captain America in Marvel lore. Basically, the modern Captain America starts with issue 100. Is that right?
Something like that. It's the same, like the Incredible Hulk had a similar thing. His first issue, I think, was
because
102.
Previously, I think it was Strange Tales or Tales to Astonish, and they just gave Captain America the book eventually.
Yeah. So, little Marvel history here. I can't remember what the number was, but they were capped at a certain number of books per month. So for the longest time, they would do 2 parts. So like Tales to Astonish would have the Submariner and the Incredible Hulk. Or it started as general monster stuff, but at some point, the heroes they kind of took the book over, and eventually Hulk took over, and they just kept the numbering. So I don't know as much the details on the Captain America, but yes, the exact same thing kind of played out.
Okay. He and Iron Man shared it for a little bit before it was his book, 100.
Yeah. And obviously something must have got canceled because Iron Man, I think, was it 1968 or so?
Oh.
That he got number 1 issue? I can't remember. But anyways, yeah. Do you have anything else?
No, go ahead with the comic book history integrating the movie elements. Issue 230 something, 38 something.
237. It became known that he was a commercial artist. I don't think he drew any pictures of children on the beach. And then in issue 259, a young man. See here, a young man in the comic, not drawn on the beach, who was formerly in a gang, I guess, built a custom high-performance motorcycle. And then in 318, he received a specially customized conversion van, courtesy of the Black Panther. So
what's Black Panther doing with a van?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if the Black Panther was portrayed in the same way back then, but I don't know.
Okay.
Seems odd, though.
I guess the motorcycle has stuck ever since.
Yeah, and it makes sense that he would ride a motorcycle. I can't see a Captain America car,
Well, Spider-Man had a car, didn't he? The Spider car, and Thanos had a helicopter.
Yeah, and Fantastic Four had a flying car, right?
Well, maybe Spider-Man had the buggy, like the spider buggy or something like that.
I think that's right. I think he had a spider buggy, but yeah.
So, World War II, though, this movie does establish Steve Rogers is not the first Captain America in this take on it.
Yeah. Do you think this was a budget call?
I don't know what kind of call this was.
I guess they needed to set it in modern times. So unless you were going to say he already had the serum or the steroid and had been a Captain America for 30 years, you really couldn't go that route. And that does make sense. But made for TV, $150,000, you can't really set it in the 40s. It needs to be modern times somewhere. Though I don't know why they picked California. But, another little thing. But anyways, yeah. So his father... Yeah. So his father was the original Captain America. I don't think so.
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers. I should have gave him a sweatshirt. Captain America sweat. But anyways, over the course of the movie, they tie into the fact that his father was the original Captain America. And I don't know if we want to
They
go
never
step
say
by
during
step through
World
the
War
movie.
II. They just say in the 40s, I think.
Yeah, they don't even imply World War II
Mm.
because they don't imply that he ever went overseas. Seems
No,
to
it
be more
sounds
of
like
a
he
domestic.
battled criminals, didn't he? Isn't that what they said?
Yeah, yeah. I think it was more of a kingpin kind of situation.
Okay.
White collar crime, maybe. I don't know.
And I guess the nickname was given to him by the bad guys. Is that where it originated, Captain America?
Yeah, I guess they were poking fun at him. I guess he had already made this horrendous suit, and that's probably why. That or
Okay,
he took that or he liked the name and made the suit afterward. They didn't chicken and the egg kind of situation. They
it's
don't really
it's
talk about it.
weird to me. No photos of Mister Rogers Senior ever appear, and no photo reference of the old costume.
Well, they couldn't take pictures because then they would have received a lawsuit from PBS.
Okay.
Can't be exposing Mr. Rogers' identity like that.
Mm.
There was rumors that he was a Marine with tattoos.
Oh boy.
I think it
So
was
let's talk about the
debunked.
steroids. The FLAG is an acronym, right? For whatever
Yes.
this drug is.
Yeah. So I don't. Do we really want to go through the plot, or we want to go straight to flag?
What plot? Do your best.
All right. So we've already talked about no World War II, no Nazis, no Red Skulls, set in the 70s. He just got out of the Marines, returns home to California. I guess Brooklyn, California. I don't know. He wants to be an artist. He wants to kind of live free, man, and drawing pictures of kids. He wanted to be living, man. But before he could do that, he had to check his mail. And you see, this mellow dude, he got 2 letters. One from his father's former colleague, another from, I guess, this some family friend. I don't know. They don't really. I can't. I watched this about 4 days ago, so some of the details are a little gone.
I think the
You
name
may
is
have to correct
Jeff.
me. Yeah.
Dude named Jeff.
So he plans on visiting both of them that evening as he leaves, and he starts leaving, and he sees some really, I guess he considers outstanding citizens, but they look like thugs to us, pretending to be road workers, excuse me. If they were road warriors, that would have been even more. That would have been better.
Yeah, we needed something like that.
And they tell him that the road's closed, so he'll have to take this dangerous mountain path instead. He says, "Okay, dude."
Never take the mountain pass. I'm just going to tell you right now.
Yeah, so he happily drove his hippie van up this mountain road. And then the road workers send a message to someone else, and a truck starts dumping oil along the mountain path. And Steve loses control, and he drives over a cliff. Van gets a little bit smashed up, though he does get to use it later. Steve has no major injuries, no blood.
Shirt gets
he,
torn. Yeah.
he ripped his polo in such a way that his muscles get exposed.
Very clean look. Very clean.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they didn't give him any blood.
Well, they didn't want anybody to ask any questions when he went to the laboratory, Simon's lab. So
I guess.
Did he change shirts before he got there?
He did. He had a new shirt.
Yeah.
And he rode the motorcycle, which I guess was in the back of the van.
Over it's attached to the back. It was on the back of it.
Yeah. You're right.
Didn't get damaged somehow, but it's in great shape.
I always thought driving off a cliff would be a little more traumatic. But so he rides his bike over to the lab of his father's old associate. This is where we talked about him earlier, Dr. Simon Mills. And Mills shows him a project he's been working on, which is, they call it a steroid, called the flag serum.
Oh, man. That's what we needed in the Olympics against Russia.
Yeah. FLAG stands for Full Latent Ability Gain. And it basically will increase your strength, your hearing, your jumping ability, apparently. And some other things that we don't really understand. But then...
Doesn't it jump off that theory that humans only use 10% of whatever their full capacity? And the idea that this is going to make him use full capacity of his human body and mind?
Yeah, it's a little bit different take than the old Hulk show, right? Because the Hulk show, which I don't know if you saw the pilot, Bixby or David Banner was trying to tap into the human's ability to do extraordinary feats of strength for a short period of time, like basically from adrenaline. So these people that if they needed to in the moment could lift a car, kind of thing. So it's not quite the same as that, but is I guess a similar vein of the 10% of the body, which I always thought that was the brain. I never realized that was part of the muscle stuff. But
I think it's all pseudoscience. But there you go.
Yeah, but I think if you're going to make the argument, the brain makes more sense.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So apparently this serum's been working great in the lab rats, with one small little problem.
They die.
They die within 2 weeks.
Eh, well, they live shorter lifespans anyway, you know. It's
Yeah.
like a human dying 20 years earlier. I like how the Dr. Simon explains the mice feats in terms of how impressive it would be if a human's doing it. Like, you know, if he was a human, he'd be running 55 miles an hour right now.
Maybe that's why the rat died in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, man. Overexertion.
Yeah.
Not that cellular rejection.
They don't really understand that they need to slow down and eat some food. But
Well, yeah.
Dr. Mills's theory is not an overexertion take. So Steve's father had been the one who originally developed the super steroid, and he used his own cells to do so. And he tested it on himself, and it gave him all these abilities which he used to fight crime as the original Captain America. And Dr. Mills really wants Steve to inject himself. Because he figures maybe the reason the rats are dying is because they don't have the same DNA as the serum. So Steve really wasn't too hip on this. Wonder why.
Well, fortunately, Dr. Simon has a very hot assistant lady.
As one online summary said of the story, this is Dr. Mills talking to Steve. This isn't the quote, but this is the way it came across. That's you, Steve. Do you mind if we just experiment on your body for science? Nothing major. We just want to poke, prod, take some fluid samples, and then inject you with this stuff that's definitely not FDA approved and has a roughly 50-50 chance of killing you.
But I'm sure it'll work.
Yeah. That was from Laura Kelly on inverse.com, by the way, from a 2019 review.
So, all the while, I'm going to progress a little bit. There's a mysterious evil organization of people that I forget the name of, but they expect that Dr. Simon will eventually put the serum into Steve Rogers. And so to prevent this from happening, they keep wanting to kill Steve Rogers.
Yes. And I think they could have used a few lines of dialogue to explain why they already at this point had been trying to kill him. Because Steve himself would have had no information about any of this stuff. So it must have been leaked from someone at the lab that they wanted to inject Steve with flag.
Yeah.
That's the only way that makes sense. But they don't really make that clear in the movie.
It seems like it's a dramatic point the movie really could have used an inside man or woman.
Yeah.
Nah, they didn't have
Well, they kind of did, but not in this area, though.
Huh.
Because speaking of the inside man, he had another stop to make after Steve says no, thank you. And he goes to see his friend Jeff Hayden, who had been working with this organization you just referred to, a major oil company. The guy,
that was
Lou
his
Brackett.
employer? Oh, I thought it was just some random other company he was working for.
No, so Lou Brackett owns, or he at least ran, this major oil company whose name I forget off the top of my head.
Shell Exxon.
Yeah. And by the time Steve gets to his house, there had been some kind of fight taking place, and Steve finds an injured Jeff Hayden who dies in his arms.
Says a few words that are not really relevant to how this movie works out.
Yeah. We find out that Hayden had been working with Brackett on a neutron bomb, and apparently was holding some of the film related to the plans. But Hayden was having second thoughts of some sort. This was kind of clear as mud.
Oh, man.
I think it kind of required 2 watchings to kind of get it squared away, or you could just read the wiki notes and see what you missed. Because it was very...
Actually, Wikipedia doesn't have anything about this. I looked it up. They don't mention this plot at all. Maybe okay, the neutron bomb, fine, but...
Yeah, so I meant to look up a neutron bomb. So
it had already been invented, though, by 1979. America did it it's a cleaner option in a hypothetical war with the Russians.
Well, let's come back to that for just a second. Let's finish up this part so we don't have to come back to refer to Hayden again. But so Brackett's men came to get the film from Hogan. It didn't go well, and Hayden ended up getting killed. Brackett wasn't too thrilled because he still wanted the film. And these were the same guys who were behind Steve's accident on the road, which makes more sense later because they haven't introduced the fact that it was an oil company yet. So it's kind of a little plot point that kind of ties together later.
But it makes sense how they could pour it over the road.
Yeah. Some of Brackett's men, they end up seeing Steve at Hayden's house, and therefore they think he knows about the film, which seems like they would have already thought that he knew something about it based on them trying to kill him. But they end up pursuing Steve. He's on his bike, and in the midst of the chaos, Steve crashes his motorcycle off. I think the same cliff.
It blows
And
up
he's
real good.
yeah, and he's severely injured in the crash. So, yeah, so apparently it's a lot safer to fall off a mountain in a van than a motorcycle.
I can see that if you have your seatbelt on, sure. Now, there was a scene in the movie where the head bad guy tells one of the goon bad guys, make sure he's dead this time. But they don't do anything to check for a body. They just kind of leave it there, even though there's no witnesses or authorities that could stop them.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how he stayed on the bike to be caught up in the explosion either.
They should have checked for a body if they're a professional hitman, but oh well.
Yeah. Back to the neutron bomb. Eventually, and we're going to be bouncing around just a little bit here, we find out that their plan is to destroy, I think it's Phoenix?
Yeah, why not? Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix, Arizona with a neutron bomb and take gold from a mine. And this is where I said I meant to look it up. Apparently, in their mind, a neutron bomb will kill all the people, but it will not destroy the stuff.
So,
seems questionable.
Well, again, how many
and
people
overkill,
are they wanting to kill?
And
that's
overkill.
The other question. How many people are they wanting? Because with the neutron bomb, again, it's more like military. Like, it's an advanced form of a landmine, more or less. You're trying to get your enemy into that kind of situation.
It sounds big.
Yeah. Well, the bomb in this movie is humongous. It's like longer than a pickup truck in this one. So I pretty big little deal.
See here. The lethal radius for a neutron bomb's radiation dose for a low altitude burst is about 700 meters. Okay. A death ray it is not.
No.
Yeah, so 2,100 feet. All right, okay. Well, all right. A little more reasonable.
But I don't know if that's what they're going for in this movie.
No, they want it to sound big.
But again, why not just call it a hydrant?
Yeah.
But again, it's also the thing that had already been invented. So it's like they need Jeff's film in order to finish the thing.
I don't know. They don't try that hard to make it make too much sense.
Yeah.
So Steve's in critical condition. It's not really clear whether he's on his deathbed, but he's at least in serious shape. And
they do make. Dr. Simon makes a comment. He's practically dead already. Yeah. Okay, Simon, if you say so.
If you need to tell yourself that.
Yeah.
So Simon Mills, he decides it's the perfect time to test out Flag, and he decides, let's give it to him. If he lives, he lives. If he dies, he dies. And he figures probably that he won't be blamed if it doesn't work well, because Steve's already dying.
If he dies, he dies.
Yeah. And it works. And apparently he has enhanced abilities, which they don't explain. Mills is thrilled. He really wants Steve to stick around for experiments. And Steve says, no thanks. You gave me an unauthorized drug. That's bad.
Nurse says he can leave in the morning. As soon as she walks out, guess who walks in? Random guy with a gun.
So I will say, apparently, the fact that he wasn't sure if he was going to live more than 2 weeks was what freed him up to want to go back to the beach in his van. So I don't know.
All right.
But so the henchmen show up again, kidnap Steve. They still think he knows about the film and the bomb. But Steve, he's got his new abilities.
They take him to the meat house, Rocky Balboa style.
Yeah. And then he hits them up like Rocky the Meat.
That scene could have been a lot more brutal. I was disappointed it was so slapstick with him sliding the meat across the floor. And then eventually he just hangs the guys on the meat hooks. I don't know what I expected. Low budget
fight scene.
I wanted something more out of that scene in the meat house.
I think we wanted more out of all the fight scenes.
I don't know, that helicopter with the rifle scene was pretty good. Attempt number 4 to kill Steve Rogers happened soon after this, right?
Pretty soon. So now that he knows he has powers, he's still trying to not die. He agrees to stay and let Dr. Mills test out his powers. And that's when we find out, or that's when they introduce about his father being the American patriot and who had the nickname Captain America. And then he decides at that point that he should be the new Captain America, basically.
And he draws a picture of what he thinks it should look like at some point.
And then
he introduces the bike, and I think he mentions the van is being worked on. And at first, Steve is just out doing laps in the desert, and conveniently there's a ramp there, like a 2-part ramp. It's just out there. So he uses that, and he uses the stealth feature and the jet boost. Then all of a sudden, a helicopter shows up, even though this is supposed to be some kind of a military protected zone. And a guy in the helicopter has a rifle, like he's walking out of John Carpenter's 1981 The Thing. He starts taking shots at Steve on the bike. And unfortunately, the bike has the special bulletproof shield as the windshield, when it would make a lot more sense here to put it over his back to block those bullets. But they ride, and it takes, I don't know, what, I'm thinking, what's Simon doing here? Like, did Simon set this whole thing up? He's completely clueless until 5 or 6 minutes after this goes on for a while.
Yeah, Simon is the creepiest non-villain ever in a movie. Not ever, but I mean, but definitely the vibes of this movie is like you're waiting for the turn.
Oh yeah,
and it does not happen.
This movie would make so much more sense if he was the villain.
Yeah, so I should say his bike, it doesn't look very good. So this would not have been a big budget item if they kept the series. They basically got a cheap dirt bike underneath it and some plastic shelling on top. Band doesn't look much better. It may look worse. It depends on your taste. They introduce, and I don't want to get into this character, we have Hayden's teenage daughter gets revealed, and they kind of use her.
Tina. Yeah.
Yeah, and they kind of use her to help kind of lighten Hayden's image, so he's not like a true villain. It's like almost like they regretted making him too much of a villain.
They introduced some weird subplot about her mother having disappeared.
Yeah, completely needless. The guy, he decided to do something bad, and he had second thoughts because he didn't want to kill people. That's all you had to do. So then they used their brain to figure out where the neutron bomb's going to be going off at. And I don't remember what the steps they took to get there, but they used a map. So they decided
before after Tina got captured.
Yeah, but they basically looked at a map and looked at potential places, and then they guessed right based on like travel time, basically.
When Dr. Wendy went to visit Tina for some reason, and she got kidnapped by the villain, who also got the film.
Yes. Now I guess that's how they resolved the film thing. But yeah,
he got the film right there with Tina, right? And then Wendy showed up, and the villain takes them, and then I guess Steve and Simon, they're back in the lab and they're waiting on the ransom phone call, right? Am I tracking that?
Yeah, I think that's right. It's a very convoluted section of the movie. It's almost clear, but not quite. And there's just enough characters where you kind of think I would rewound it and maybe watch 10 minutes again to get my details straight.
So I should say this. This is a 90-minute run, or 100 minutes. And we've got about 20 left at this point when we get the ransom call or something.
Yeah, and there's no actual suit yet, by the way.
I don't even know what the call's about, saying we've got the hostages. What have they even asked for? They said send Steve Rogers so we can kill him?
Well, he said no cops and don't send Steve is actually what he said.
Oh, what? Why? What have they've got everything.
Well, they know. Well, at this point, they do know that he took the serum, I believe.
Makes sense. He beat up the 3 guys in the meat house.
Yeah. But of course, Captain America's not going to do that. So he makes a deal with Simon and to influence the cops to let him go on his own. I don't know what the cops thought Simon was doing. He shows up at this oil refinery.
1 second. Simon recommends Steve wear a disguise.
Yeah.
And the disguise is, of course, the costume that he drew that they already manufactured. This is the worst excuse ever to get somebody into a costume.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it is plausible that they could have made that suit that quickly because it's really cheap looking.
Has a zipper in the back.
Yeah.
No star on the back, if I remember.
So Captain America in his suit, in his mask is the motorcycle helmet with some wings painted on top.
Oh.
And which, I mean, if it's a prototype suit, I'll give that a pass.
Yeah, it's like the first Spider-Man movies always have the dorky homemade suit.
Well, not for the whole movie, but
no.
Yeah. So then Cap shows up at this oil refinery. Eventually, he's seen by security, and after making some big jumps, he takes them out by spraying oil on the ground and laughing maniacally as they slip.
He gets away. He doesn't knock anybody out, or he just kind of knocks them over, and they give up.
Yeah. So I saw a note that in this movie he can throw his shield and it comes back without having to bang off of something. I must have missed
Yes.
that.
It does happen in the movie. Yeah, he does the boomerang toss. He does it there. It ain't good. It looks like when it hits the bad guy from behind, it is the weakest looking trajectory and impact ever.
They must have used all their budget on the suit.
Or the aerial scenes, helicopters
Yeah,
and all that.
that's true.
Yeah, we'll give him credit for that. When he
So
saves the girl, he learns which silo the girls are in, and when he gets there, because he interrogated a guy, and he doesn't have a great interrogation voice, but he tells Tina,
it's like a poor man's Batman. It's like a squeaky Batman.
and he eventually tells Wendy to do the same thing. Again, he didn't clear this area of armed guards and everything else. That struck me as a really bad idea to just run out into the open.
Agreed. In defense of this, I'm not convinced these security guys aren't just regular security guys. This is an oil company.
Okay,
so they don't necessarily imply that the security is. If he was dressed like Steve Rogers, they may not have chased him. He dressed up in a red, white, and blue costume with a big, weird-looking shield.
We have a person of interest. We have a suspect.
Yeah. So the guy he interrogated, he puts in the silo where the ladies were, and he holds him by the collar, and it is implied that he's choking him or strangling him or something, because the guy passes out and he checks for a pulse. Well, all he does is like shake his collar.
Yeah.
So apparently, it's a very vigorous shaking.
It's like that scene from Evil of Frankenstein when the creature kills the Burgermeister. Just ain't what you want it to be.
But it's even worse because at least the Burgermeister's touching the wall.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced Rogers has touching any skin.
And then immediately you got all that momentum of Captain in the costume, and I think we cut back to Simon's lab, and he's back in plain clothes, isn't he?
I think so. I think.
What a...
Because they don't know where to go yet. And then...
But again, he's changed costume, so it's not like it keeps the momentum going in any way.
No. So they figured that they find out the bomb's already in transit. It's not on site. And I guess they know they need to catch up with this truck.
Yeah.
So they take the helicopter, and Mills is flying it.
Yep.
And then
Steve's there.
Steve's there, and we don't see it, but his bike is in the helicopter too, which I don't know if that's reasonable or not. It probably is, but it didn't really look like a military copter. So eventually they fly really low to the ground and really close to this truck, not being noticed.
That's a good shot. It's a good shot.
It's a very nice shot, but it doesn't make any sense. And he had all this regular street traffic, which is probably...
Can you imagine watching that if you're just some dude? Oh, man.
If they had cell phones back in the day, they would have been calling the cops. Because that's probably the only way you get away with that. And so at some point they figure out like Steve needs to be dropped off up ahead, so he's in position to chase the truck. So he goes and drops Steve off, and he rides off in his motorbike. And then the helicopter, I don't know where it goes, but it gets lost for a while. We don't see it for a while. You'd think it would keep up.
Yeah, the motorcycle's able to keep up with this truck a lot better than the helicopter was, even though the helicopter dropped the bike off. So it's kind of cool when Steve gets to the truck. He jumps off the motorcycle. Does he climb it from the back so he isn't seen by any rearview mirrors?
Well, he climbs it from the back. I'm not sure if it's for that reason, but he basically the components of the door, he uses them as a ladder to get on top of the truck.
Okay, yeah. That's feasible how he wouldn't be seen either.
Yeah. Though I don't think these bad guys were going to see anything. They don't ever see him, I don't think.
I was expecting a fist fight on top of the truck trailer. Didn't happen.
Oh, this ain't no Incredible Hulk show. You can't be... No budget for that.
But he gets... Now, I'd never seen this. Somebody trying to stop a semi-truck and pulling one of the exhaust pipes. And it didn't really damage the truck any, even though it's inconsistent from shot to shot. But he just uses it to carbon monoxide poison the bad guy to death. I like that. I'd never seen a Marvel movie.
Well, now in his defense, he saw there was a radio in there on the wall. Did Captain America ever kill his opponents by carbon monoxide poison in the comics?
It's very clean, untraceable, perfect crime, or perfect justice. Yeah.
So he pulls one of the pipes off the front of the truck back. The two that stick out the top of the truck. He pulls one of them into the window.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually Hayden gets hold of the drivers. And if they pull over to check on him, Cap beats them up pretty quickly.
Knocks him down the hill.
Yeah, never to be seen again. Gets into the truck, looks at Hayden, realizes that Hayden has a trigger attached to him. And it looks like after talking to his friend on the intercom, they decide it looks like it's tied to his heartbeat. Yep. And if he dies from the poisoning, the bomb will go off.
Dead man's finger. This is not how I expected this movie to conclude.
No, it needed another scene. If this was so I will say, if this was an hour-long television show, this movie would have been good.
Yeah, sure. I give it's a good episode for a TV show.
Yeah, one episode. Because if you're going to make two out of it, you need to change the ending up here and throw a little wild card, maybe the turning of the cop or something. Simon gets there and gives him an oxygen mask, gives him a shot of unknown substance they never say, and then his breathing stabilizes.
And so nobody blows up, even though I wonder, again, we're talking about 700 meters here of damage, right? In a fairly low usage desert highway. But
yeah, and then Mills tells Cap to run away, stay hidden, and end credits.
Does he ever make out with Dr. Wendy? Or how'd we end the movie? Did they do a freeze frame or something? I've forgotten the end of this movie. I think it's just a freeze frame, though. Like, roll credits.
I think pretty much.
No. He gets the real costume, remember? They cut to the desert again.
Yeah.
He gets the real costume.
He gets his father's costume.
Well, one that looks just like it. We never know how Mr. Rogers died, or else he went into hiding on public television.
Yeah, you're right. So I can't believe we forgot that. The movie ends by introducing the true Captain America costume, though I can't recall the ears if they look right.
He still has the helmet and the goggles, but he has a blue mask beneath his goggles.
Yeah. And he's got the classic 1950s look where he's got the little
red boots,
ruffles on his boots.
And I guess the red tights and belt and the proper pattern of we'll call him a
swashbuckler. Yeah, he's got the swashbuckler boots.
Yeah, okay. But the shield still looks like as bad as it always did. Although I will say, if your primary objective of the shield is to block bullets, it does make sense if it's transparent to some degree.
Well, you also could just make a bulletproof windshield and make the shield the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, as a shield, it's transparent, but as a windshield, it's still pretty awful. If you're trying to look through a big opaque shield with red stripes all over it and a blue star in the middle. Captain America. There you go.
So released in the same year, we do have the sequel, Captain America 2, Death Too Soon.
They kill him off that quickly? Huh.
Don't know. Be interesting. Well, interesting might be a strong word. We will see.
I know Christopher Lee's in it as the main villain. I'm pretty sure he ain't the Red Skull, though.
You know, it's funny how all these movies connect in one way or the other.
One way. That's true.
Was that the 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon scenario or something?
Yeah, I don't know how many degrees it is, but it is cooking bacon there.
Yeah. So, out of 4 steroids, what would you rank the movie? Or out of 5?
I'm going to give it ultimately the thumbs down. As much as I love the aerial shots, I think that's more of documentary. You know, just sort of separate those as some weird documentary of California and trash the rest of this movie. Sorry, Reb Brown.
Yeah, so I'm going to give it 2 steroids. Could have easily been 2.5 to 3 if they had made just a few small adjustments. Like, put it in New York.
Then we wouldn't get those coastal shots.
Like, call it a serum, super serum instead of a steroid.
It's no biggie. It's the 70s.
Make the shield not look like crap. I'll take the costume for what it is. They introduced the other one. I'm okay with them having his father be the original Captain America because I know they didn't have any money. So like I get that, and they needed to be in the modern day and not the 40s. So I give them a pass on that.
I really come back. The fact that this movie does not have memorable villains with clear motivations, or even the fact that I can't remember the name of the head villain.
Well, I'll say this. I'm evaluating this movie as a made-for-television movie.
And you're going to have different villains every week. Right.
It's a proposed pilot for a show. Yeah. The problem is it should have been one of the episodes and not the pilot.
Yeah.
I don't know. For 1979, it's probably not that bad. It's probably a thumb
No,
sideways in 1979.
we should have called this Private America instead of Captain America. Low-level infantryman America.
Yeah, I feel like this guy has more of a personality of Captain Planet.
Ooh, that ain't a compliment.
No.
He could have been a live-action Captain Planet. Did they ever try that? Ted Turner and everybody launching a live-action Captain P.
No, I think there was like maybe a fan trailer of some sort. Captain Planet he was a lot more interesting as the villain.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This movie also feels very fan filmy to me, even though I understand it's a TV pilot that didn't have the success they wanted for it. Universal puts their name on this proudly, though.
They do. All right. Well, you got any closing thoughts on Beach Bum John Kids on the Beach?
Rogers? I forget the exact quote, but in the 1994 movie Pulp Fiction, when John Travolta and Samuel Jackson's characters, they've had a near-death experience, and Sam Jackson's character's attempting to rethink his life, saying in terms of spiritual terms, getting right with God and all that. He decides he's going to give up the life of violence, the life of the lowly hitman, and he's going to simply walk the earth, like in Kung Fu, David Carradine, just going from place to place, seeing what people need and setting right wrongs and all that. And the Travolta character says, "We have a word for that. It's called bum."
I think they should have made this an absurd comedy.
Yeah, it'd be a good one. I agree. Like the Batman show. Just lean into the... Problem is, Captain America has terrible villains once you get past the Red Skull for the most part.
Yeah. So do you think this movie would have, as a comedy, would this movie have been better if Steve Rogers played the straight man and everyone else was absurd? Or the other way around, where he was absurd, everyone else is a straight man?
No, I think you got to keep Steve Rogers as a straight man. But it would be interesting to be the hippie, mellow straight man, whereas everybody else is just crazy whatever.
Yeah. He does kind of play an absurd character for the first 15 minutes. I'm sure the Scooby-Doo crowd loved this movie.
The Scooby-Doo crowd.
Yeah, the Scooby van.
It is the Mystery Machine. It even has the little shag carpeting in the back after they've renovated it for the military.
They should have given him a dog to live in his van with him.
That could have added a lot. What would they have called the dog other than Bucky? If we're not going to say Bucky, what's the name of the dog?
Oh, he would have been great.
Bucky the dog. Hey, see, we've already improved the concept here. We just need a Great Dane named Bucky to ride around in the van with.
All right. That's been Captain America 1979, starring Reb Brown and his lasting
career highlight.
We wish him the best on the Comic-Con circuit.
Yep.
It's on his $50 prints.
Yep.
And I hope if I'm ever there and I buy one, I hope to get a picture with him.
There you go.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.